So the Disney version of Cinderella is really interesting because it was kind of an actual Cinderella story. What had happened is the Disney company had gotten $4 million in debt, and they had basically 3 flops in a row with Fantasia, Bambi, and Pinocchio that had not done very well at the box office. And back then, they only had one shot to make back the money, the years and years and years of time that went into one of these films. So if they didn't do well, then there was no chance of later recouping the money that they'd invested. And it was made even worse by the fact that the Disney Studios was basically co-opted by the war effort to produce propaganda films in the late 40s, mid to late 40s. So now 1950s comes, they're $4 million in debt. They'd had a major strike that was a huge problem, and so Disney really needed a hit. And so that's why they went back to the princess stories that had served them so well in the Snow White. The character of Cinderella in the Disney movie has a lot of positive traits. She's very kind. She's very hardworking. Almost the whole movie, she is on her hands and knees, scrubbing, mopping, cleaning drapes, working really hard. That is good. That is good. If anything, a character like Rapunzel is more of a damsel in distress because she isn't really working. She's, baking pies and painting and just kind of sitting there in a tower. But Cinderella is actually working hard as a servant, and she still manages to be happy, even though she's living this horrible life basically as a slave. There's also, of course, the mice in Cinderella and the birds, and the mice are kind of silly. But the Gus, and Jack, and so they work really hard. They try to make her dress, and of course it gets torn apart, and that's really sad. I mean, she's a good enough friend that she has these friends who want to make her dress. And so in her ultimate point of despair, she is rescued by basically a mother character, the fairy godmother, who comes and saves the day and rescues her. And then she goes and meets the prince, and of course they do fall in love. But I think there's a good lesson that, all of us are in need of rescue from time to time. All of us have those moments where we need somebody to come and say, okay, I'm taking you. I'm going to make sure you have a great experience. I'm going to make this all work for you. And you just have to sit back and let it happen. And that's basically what happens to Cinderella. I remember a time in my life when my grandpa and cousin had died. And it was my first time ever losing anybody. And I was just so depressed and so sad. And my friend came over and said, all right, get in the car. We're going out. We're going to go to do something. And, she had it all planned. She paid for it. She made sure it happened. And it was a form of rescue. And from Cinderella is that her friends love her. And that is the thing that allows her to find true love, is because she has a good heart. She works hard, and she deserves to be happy. There is the heroine villain subplot in Cinderella with Lady Tremaine is her stepmother, and she is definitely one of the most evil stepmothers. But there's a long line of heroine villainess within fairy tales, and so it's hard to fault Cinderella for following that storyline when almost every fairy tale does it. And it is, I think, a good message to learn for kids that there is evil and there is good. And that's the whole point of a fairy tale, is to kind of teach those lessons.